Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to That Triathlon Show, the podcast presented by scientifictriathlon.com. I'm your host, Michael, and this episode is Q&A number 61. Before we get into the questions for today, big thanks to our sponsors, Precision Hydration, that you can find on precisionhydration.com. As you'll hear, one of the questions for today is about heat acclimatization. And one aspect when you read about heat acclimatization and what goes into it that really needs to be considered is the amount of hydration that's needed and replacement of lost fluid and lost electrolytes. And Precision Hydration can help you with that. They have a free hydration plan tab on their website that takes you to a short and simple quiz consisting of 10 questions that you can answer in a few minutes' time, and that will give you a plan for how much fluid and how much electrolytes you should consume in your goal race. But an interesting thing to consider here is that you don't necessarily have to use that for your goal race. You can adjust your answers so that they reflect, for example, your normal training environment or a heat acclimatization protocol that you're going through. And then that will give you whatever hydration strategy makes sense for that given condition. So that's an interesting use case to consider. You can try your first box or two of electrolytes for free with the promo code THATTRIATHLONSHOW, all one word, all caps, on precisionhydration.com. And also big thanks to Roka for sponsoring the podcast. They can be found on roka.com, that's roka.com, and that's where you should go if you're looking for wetsuits, tri-suits, swim skins, goggles, buoyancy shorts, eyewear, and you'll be guaranteed to get a super high quality product, whatever it is you're looking for, because Roka really take their product development and their investment in R&D to the nth degree and make sure that when they release a product, it is absolutely fantastic, top class, whatever it is, whether it's a wetsuit or a new pair of sunglasses. So check them out and get 20% off your entire order. Great to use now with Christmas coming up to get some gifts for your loved ones with the promo code TTS all caps. So again, that's TTS all caps for 20% off your entire order. So on to today's questions. First, we have a question from Brett who writes, I seem to be one of the few that has more than enough time to train to my full potential without juggling crazy hours or a family. There's an abundance of info for time-starved people, but not the other way around. I'm 35 years old, I sold my businesses, and I only have to spend a few hours per week working. My question is, how would you recommend someone like me take advantage training-wise compared to those with limited hours? My background is I finished my short distance career on doing the age group ITU World Championships, and I'm looking at doing more 70.3s in the coming years. Usually my 70.3 time is around 4 hours 45 minutes, with the swim being my weakest and the run being my strongest. I have a solid base in all three sports. Should I swim 7 days a week? Should I do more base training, more strength training? Any info about how to take advantage of my time is appreciated. All right, Brett, thanks for your question. And you're right, it is a question that is not addressed as often as the other way around. So happy to oblige and give some tips from my side. You're in a lucky situation, obviously, and if you are motivated to maximize your performance and you can do that while still enjoying the sport, which should always be priority number one, then definitely you should make use of the time that you have. And quite simply, increasing training volume is the number one thing that you can do to improve your potential. But you have to increase your training volume gradually, very gradually. And there's no exact formula for how to do this. You will need to pay attention to what your body is telling you and how you're performing in training, how you're sleeping, many other things to take into account. But to give you a rough idea, let's say you're currently training 10 hours per week, then I would say spend at least a month for each added weekly hour. So train at an average of 11 hours per week for 1 month and then average 12 hours for another month and so on. This is just a guideline again, so you may find at some point that you get to a level where you're quite fatigued and can no longer perform to the level that you could before in some of your key workouts. And when that happens, or if that happens, decrease your volume and recover for some time. Then get back to that same volume, but just stay there until you can train at that volume consistently without feeling that accumulation of fatigue that negatively impacts performance. Since you are 35 years old, you only work a few hours per week and you have solid base in all three sports, on paper you should be able to get up to consistently training 20 hours per week or so, and maybe even more, and be able to positively adapt from that. But keep in mind that everybody's an individual, so you will need to listen to your body, and if you end up performing better on a lesser volume, so 16, 17 hours or something, there's no reason to force volume. That's a means to an end, and that end is improved performance. So keep that in mind always. Just as important, depending on what your current training volume is, as I already alluded to, it may take you a long time to actually build up to something like 20 hours per week consistently. It may easily take you 2 years, and you should not be surprised if that is the case. Be patient, play the long game, and don't do too much too soon. It's also important to keep in mind that wherever you're starting from as a baseline, an increasing volume, even if it's just by 1 hour per week, so you increase now from 10 hours to 11 hours per week, for example, and you keep that 11 hours per week for 1 month, as I said in my previous example, even if it seems very small, but it is an added stress for the body, something that is not been used to from before. So there is a potential for adaptation from this extra stress that is seemingly such a small increase. But on the flip side, if you jump very quickly to what the body perceives as way over the top volume, it will just shut down in order to protect itself. It's a protection mechanism. So small gradual increases in training stress, and in this case training volume, will be effective, but big jumps probably won't be, at least when you go past a certain limit. Now, I know that you didn't specifically ask about whether you should be increasing training volume. I know that you assumed that is the case, or you already are at a high training volume. So you're asking about what you should do with that training volume. So I will get to that now, but that is really $1 million question, and it is very individual. So I would suggest, first of all, that if you are going to be spending a lot of time training, then get a coach. A coach will help you figure out what the best way, or at least one of the possible best ways for you is to do with the time that you have available to train. When you are investing that many hours per week training, then it makes sense to have a coach help you get the most out of that time, because it's not something that I can say or anybody can say without really getting to know you over a longer period of time, and having that constant communication and interaction and seeing how things are going with your training and how you're adapting. But I can give you some general thoughts and pieces of advice, and I will do that. And that is that, first of all, the more training that you do, the more there is a need to do strength training, as you suggest, just to make sure that you keep your body in balance and actively do work to prevent injuries, which will allow you to keep up that consistent training at a higher volume. So I've done plenty of strength and conditioning episodes, interviews, and solo episodes. So check scientifictriathlon.com, go to the menu bar and go to more popular topics, strength training, and all of them will pop up there. The other thing that I would say is that the more training that you do, the more important it will become to practice intensity discipline, which means when you are supposed to go easy, you should really go easy. A perfect example of this is the Norwegian triathletes, and they are really taking this to the next level. And that is one reason I think that they're having such great success, because they train probably more than most other athletes on the ITU circuit and the World Triathlon Series circuit. And they can do that because they have so much control, they do so much testing, and they check their lactate levels consistently in training to make sure that they don't go over their predetermined limits based on past testing that they've done. And they're obviously doing really well. Christian Blumenfeld won the WTS Grand Final in Lausanne that you also participated in on the age group side. And Gustav Iden winning the 7.3 World Championships in Nice. So that's an example that's fresh in my mind, at least, of intensity discipline and the importance of that, and how that has allowed them to train at a very high volume, higher than most other professionals. That's what they say, at least, and I see no reason to doubt that. And the reason that they can do that again is because they are very, very diligent with that intensity discipline and not going too hard. So yeah, that's something that you have to keep in mind. And this, again, is all with the end goal of being able to consistently do whatever training volume you're doing week in, week out, without accumulating too much fatigue. Next, with plenty of time available, you will have the luxury of being able to have both frequency and duration in your workouts. So do quite a lot of workouts in each discipline each week, but also do longer workouts. And especially when you are shifting your focus to 7.3 distance racing, those long workouts will be really, really beneficial. But for you, since you have a lot of volume of training time available, they will not come at the expense of frequent workouts, which is great because frequency is super important. I would say that even if the swim is your weakness, I don't think you should jump straight into swimming 7 times per week, just because I think that chances are you won't manage to stay really focused throughout each session 7 times per week. And then chances are that you won't get as much out of those sessions as you should. And it might be better to have slightly fewer sessions and make sure that you're 100% focused and present whenever you're swimming so that you can improve. So build up your swimming frequency and total distance or volume as well over time. Again, keeping the big picture in mind and making sure that you're really patient. It might take you a year or two to get to the level where you think that you should be now. That's normal, but be patient and stay away from the temptation to just jump into doing too much too soon. So yeah, 7 times per week right now. I do not think that you should do that, but I would say that you can do probably 5 swims per week if we assume that you have already built up to training around 20 hours per week. If not, maybe you start out a bit lower. You start at 4 swims per week, and then you gradually increase that to 5 swims per week. And 5 swims per week, I think, is a great amount of swimming already, and you don't necessarily need to do more than that. Even 4 times per week is a really good amount. But if you really want to focus on that because you say it's your weakness, then 5 swims per week would maybe be what I would recommend. But then you could still have 4 to 5 runs per week and 4 to 5 bikes per week if you have that 20 plus hour training week. So that gives you plenty of frequency, and you can still have 1 long workout per discipline per week, which would be something like a 4-hour ride, 1 hour 45 to 2 hour run, and a 90-minute swim. Those would be sort of like the benchmarks for the long workout in each discipline each week. The next tip that I have is that when training at a higher volume, you will, over time especially, build up a stronger base, and that allows you to do more challenging quality workouts. So when previously you may have been able to do 3 times 20 minutes at sweet spot on the bike, for example, when you have been training 20 hours per week for some months, your ability to repeat that sort of higher intensity or moderate intensity in this case, but still remain strong and do that time and time again will increase. So your fatigue resistance will increase. So you can start to attempt to challenge yourself in those hard workouts by adding more time in zone. So do 4 times 20 minutes instead of 3 times 20 minutes. Of course, gradually build up to that. But that's what I would say that can change with your quality workouts. The number of quality workouts doesn't really need to change necessarily, but the quality workouts that you do can become slightly more demanding. And most importantly, this is the final tip here. Remember that it doesn't matter if you train 20 plus hour weeks if you get injured doing so, because then you'll get not back to square one, but you'll take several steps back, and you won't hit that consistency that is the most important thing. So you have to do everything required to stay injury free. So the most important aspects of that include sleep, nutrition, and getting massages and other physiotherapy, doing some foam rolling perhaps, mobility work, and strength and conditioning as already mentioned, as well as the intensity discipline as already mentioned. So I hope this helps, Brett, and good luck with your training. The next question is from Chris in Thailand, who writes, "Hello, want to get your thoughts on this. I will be competing in my first 7.3 distance race in Thailand in February in a tropical climate. I live and train in Thailand. I will have 3 weeks over Christmas where I will be in the USA in a cold climate. Will I lose my heat acclimatization during these 3 weeks? Should I train only indoors and frequently visit the sauna? Can I add more volume to my training because it's easier on the body?" All right, Chris, thank you so much for your question. So since you normally live in Thailand, you are obviously, and as you mentioned in your question, you are well acclimatized right now to that heat and humidity. And the first thing that I should point out is that when you get back to Thailand after your vacation in the USA, you will fully acclimatize back probably within 3 weeks or so. This means that if you return, let's say, mid-January to Thailand and your race is a month later, at mid-February, you really don't need to worry much because you will have plenty of time to acclimatize to the race. But that being said, there is a strong case definitely for trying to maintain or to retain that heat adaptation and heat acclimatization while you are in the US. Because if you do that, if you retain that and don't lose it, which you will if you do nothing at all, that will allow you to get right back into quality training when you return to Thailand, rather than spend a couple of weeks just getting used to even surviving any exercise intensity in that heat and humidity. So, and since when you are returning to Thailand, you might be a month out or maybe a bit more than a month out from your race. That can be crucially important because you want at that time to be doing quality training uninterrupted. So my recommendation is definitely, yes, you do want to try to retain your heat acclimatization while you are away in the US. The good news is that maintaining that heat acclimatization is far easier than gaining it in the first place. You only need probably around 2 sessions per week with some heat exposure. And that might look like one 60-hour ride on the indoor trainer and one 60-hour run on the treadmill with the fan off and maybe wearing some warmer cotton clothes, for example. So 2 times 60 minutes per week, that's not a whole lot. But if you do nothing at all to maintain your acclimatization to heat, then you will definitely start to lose it as early as after 1 week away from any heat exposure training. And that means simply that when you return, the first couple of weeks probably will be more about being able to regain that heat acclimatization rather than doing any effective training. So that's why I would recommend do what you can to maintain your heat acclimatization. Do 2 or 3 heat exposure workouts per week. And you can do them, as mentioned, as 60-minute easy endurance rides or runs on the treadmill or indoor trainer with no fan and with some extra layers on. And that will be enough to maintain most of your acclimatization. So as the sauna is great as well. If you can do sauna after those sessions or after any session, try to spend 15-20 minutes in the sauna and without any hydration between the session and the sauna, then that's another good thing to do. But if you don't have a sauna immediately available, I think that you can get away with just doing that heat exposure training, which should be fairly easy to do, especially on the bike. And there's plenty of more information in my episode 138 on the podcast that I'll link to in the episode description. It's my interview with Stephen Chung on heat adaptation, and that was a really great episode that I remember doing actually live in Lisbon with Stephen. So really great memories from that one. A lot of fun. But listen to that and that will give you plenty of more information. And as for your question about whether you can add more volume to your training because it's easier on the body, yes, you could actually do that. But probably even more importantly, I would say you can add higher intensity and you will be able to do more work at high intensity. So I would maybe, rather than focusing on the volume side, I would focus more on the quality side and doing your intense workouts more intensely than you normally can, perhaps. So that's what I would focus on when you're in the US. So even though I'm not at all against you potentially increasing your training volume, I can't say I don't have an opinion one way or the other because it depends on contexts that I don't know about from your question. But I would say that in general, perhaps I would err on the side of working more on the intensity side of things, because that's what's more limited by your normal heat and humidity in Thailand, whereas volume is something you can still do. It's just that you will be doing it at a slightly lesser intensity. But that is it for that question from Chris. Thank you, and good luck with your debut 7.3 in February. And that's also it for this episode. Keep sending in questions for future Q&As to michael@scientifictriathlon.com, and it's Michael with a K. And if you do enjoy the type of information that you get from this podcast, why not go to scientifictriathlon.com and check out the products and services that we offer there, ranging from ready-made training plans to top-class individual coaching. So check that out on scientifictriathlon.com if you're interested in learning more about what we offer. Big thanks to our sponsors, Precision Hydration, that you can find on precisionhydration.com. Get a free hydration plan and get your first box or tube of electrolytes for free with the promo code ThatTriathlonShow, all one word, all caps. And thank you to Roka for sponsoring the show. Check out their wetsuits, tri-suits, swim skins, goggles, and high-performance eyewear, and get 20% off your entire order. You can do all your Christmas shopping there with the promo code TTS, all caps. Thank you, as always, for listening. Keep training smart and keep loving triathlon.